Well, good morning, everybody. I think I'm going to have to stop trying to report on this ongoing streak from the National Weather Service in terms of slight risk days or greater, because it started back here on June the 8th, and yesterday I thought they were not going to upgrade any of the areas to a slight risk, but they did, and now we have another one today, so the streak continues for slight risk. Now, that's not the big concern I have for the forecast going forward here over the next probably 60 hours or so. What I'm worried about is a continuation of what you're seeing in this animation. So this is just going back over the last 12 hours or so. Incredibly heavy rainfall coming out of the Intermountain West and the Four Corners states here. In fact, some of these storms not only put down locally heavy rainfall, but also put down some larger hail. There was flooding that was going on in parts of Colorado, but I want you to watch what comes over the top of this ridge right here coming into Missouri. And Missouri was an area yesterday morning we kind of kept highlighting. We were watching the flow around this, and we knew that the storms were going to train or follow one another in this particular area, but we're seeing already this morning the newest storms kind of blowing up here, and they are putting down a tremendous amount of rainfall. Now, in addition to that, we had heavy rain that was in parts of the mid-Atlantic, getting down here into the Carolinas, heavy rain in Florida as well. So if we look back at those last 24 hours through 5 a.m. this morning, we can start to see kind of the totals here are pretty high in parts of Colorado, and they're just now starting to get going right into this corridor. So the concern is with this upper level setup we've got right now that this is going to continue. It will build into the southeast as well. And we're going to watch a system later this week come out of parts of the northern plains. It's going to move toward the Great Lakes states. I'll show you that in a few minutes as well. So just keep this whole thing in the back of your mind as the way that this pattern is currently setting up, because the newest forecast from the WPC on total rainfall continues to identify areas of very heavy rain. Kind of see those same corridors which we just identified, and here's the one coming from the low later this week. But this also means that there are going to be sections of the country, like in the southern plains, especially Texas, that's going to be very dry. We talked yesterday about this corridor and why it is going to be drier. Too much dry air in place, and the upper level flow bringing this low pressure center across is not going to be delivering a lot of rain here. We talked yesterday about the Canadian Prairie continuing to stay dry with limited chances of storms right into this corridor here. And then the West, very, very hot and very dry at times here over the next 7 to 10 days. So that's the overall pattern. Not much has changed in that discussion, but I just want to give you some new kind of evidence as to what's going on. And I'm going to take you to some satellite data first. So just the sun was rising here, coming up parts of Ohio down to North Carolina, cutting across the country. But I'm going to show you yesterday. A couple of things just to take note of here. You can see the deeper convection in the southeast. You can see the deeper convection here in the Intermountain West. We see isolated storm events that are popping in the northern plains and Canadian Prairie. Look at the smoke right here coming across the Great Lakes, coming out of parts of Manitoba and Ontario. You can also see some smoke right here. Imagine if those that are watching my videos in this area, skies got pretty hazy yesterday because of that smoke. And these are actually from western U.S. wildfires. We can even see where that smoke is when we let the sunset get a more oblique angle here from the sun. You can see the wildfire activity happening in Oregon. Sorry, I just got a new update there. Let me take you back. So a couple things to point out. More wildfires still going in the northwest. I have a few here in southern British Columbia, not in northern, but in southern British Columbia we're keeping a close eye on. But in the overnight hours, okay, let's let it go through. Watch right here. This is the area that I'm most concerned about in the immediate term for having flood risk continue. This pocket right in through here, this is some deep convection overnight. And what's happening is the upper level flow of the atmosphere is really just supporting thunderstorms to continue to train right into this area. So this is a look at 700 millibar winds. So I'm trying to identify that low to mid-level flow that's not only transporting the moisture, but is also creating the mid-level fronts that are going to be used to deliver this precipitation. And so what we expect is to see storms train. That means they follow one another in this particular region, which is why we've got this really increased risk of some very heavy rainfall. Now, you have to have the moisture in place, so I want you to watch this dew point animation so you can see these pieces, okay? So this is starting off early this morning, but let's play through the day today. So do you see that right there? That is our high moisture axis, and it's right there where the upper level flow is coming over the top. So we have the lift, we have the moisture, which means we're going to continue to see storms in this area. This is through tonight. As we play this out into tomorrow, this is Wednesday, getting into Wednesday evening, notice it did not move. And a lot more moisture is built farther to the north. You then go from Wednesday into Thursday. This is through Thursday evening. This is still our axis of heavy moisture, high dew point temperatures, which basically is the absolute measure of the moisture. And some of these values are way up here in the upper 70s. But you do notice that there is some drier air that's trying to invade here. So this is Thursday night. As we play this into Friday, this is Friday afternoon and evening. Now you saw that drier air dive down into this area, but what's happening is it's getting squeezed right into this quarter. So there's a front coming in this direction. There's flow coming around like this, and so there's frontogenetic processes here, which means there's a front being built, and what it's doing is it's lifting the air, increasing the risk of just continued storms. So we're already out here to Friday evening. So as we play this forward, what changes late in the week, Friday into Saturday, is watch this right here. Can you almost see the curl that's happening? This is the low we talked about yesterday, moving through the Dakotas by Saturday night into Sunday and wrapping itself out here into the Great Lakes states by early next week. And that low, the question marks will be, how strong is this frontal boundary going to be through here? You can see it. And will there, will there be storms in this corridor as this rolls through? We've not seen a deep low like this form in quite some time, so we just got to keep our eye out on it. Now, the other piece of this is what's going on in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So this is jet stream level. Here's the large ridge that's in place through early this week. But as I play this out there to Thursday into Friday, interesting thing happens here with the flow. We get this push from the subtropical jet we talked about last week. Here's a piece of the polar jet coming over like this. And what's interesting about this is to see some like fall, winter, and spring jet stream dynamics taking place. Whenever you see a piece of the jet stream like this, you can always divide it up and pick out quadrants. We're going to watch this quadrant here. So there's another one here. So we can divide it up and pick out quadrants. And this one, I want you to watch these two. So this would be what we call the left exit, and this would be the right entrance. Now, this is not full-blown jet stream dynamics like we can get in winter. But what's happening here is that these two branches of the jet stream, here's one, here's the other, are coupled. In other words, they're working together to lower the heights, lower the pressure right into this region, which means this is where the low pressure center is going to form late this week. Now, I'll cover this all again in fall and winter when this is like really on display, but this is a pretty interesting kind of mashup here between what's going on with our subtropical jet and our polar jet. Okay, bigger picture things. This is the Weather Prediction Center's excessive rainfall forecast for today. So we're watching Colorado into parts of Kansas and Nebraska, and then right here coming out of southern Iowa, but really into Missouri. Tomorrow, on day 2, they've now taken this up to a moderate risk for excessive rainfall. And then as we get into day 3, they move it into parts of the Tennessee Valley. But watch, see what's coming over the top of this again? This is the beginning of that low pressure system that's developing. So now there's the chance for heavier rain that's coming out in parts of the Dakotas. And by day 5, again, we're going to be watching this region. Now, this would be critical rain. We talked about this yesterday. This is an area that needs to have a big push of rain going into the month of August. So do we expect the next few days here to have some severe component to it? Well, here is today's Storm Prediction Center outlook for severe weather. So we have marginal risks here and here, slight risk along the U.S.-Canada border hitting North Dakota, northern Minnesota. Getting into tomorrow, it moves into parts of the upper Midwest, and then as we go into the day on the 3rd, we're going to once again watch the high plains, marginal risk here. But just take a look. This is from this morning's HighRes NAM model. I'm just going to play it out quickly for 60 hours because I want to show you where the model's putting down the greatest risk of that heavy rain. So again, we've talked about the isolated events in the mountains. We've talked about this corridor right in through here as possibly having extremely heavy rainfall. Now, will it be exactly where the NAM is putting it? No, it won't. It just won't. The model is not capable of capturing that. But I want you to see that the model is attempting to put down areas well in excess of 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. And this is just what happens when thunderstorms train or follow one another. Biggest uncertainties are here in Iowa or in parts of Illinois. I'm much more confident about this region right in through here in Missouri. Why this matters so much is just take a look at our most recent drought monitor. Now, this was the one that was released last week on the 27th, but we're talking about putting down very heavy rainfall in places that are still on the drought monitor in the highest stages of drought. So we'll go from drought to flooding very, very quickly here, given the soil conditions. So I want to be very aware of what's happening here. Now, one thing I will need to watch is as the water gets into this area, because remember, both the Missouri River and the Mississippi come together here. We know that the Mississippi, especially the lower Mississippi Valley, like at Memphis right now, the Mississippi River is still about 2 to 3 feet below its low stage. So this could be putting quite a bit of moisture into that area, which is something that, of course, we want to be watching. But the second system, as I talked about, rolling right into this area, this is going to be a big benefit to some of these regions that are in drought. The problem areas are in Texas. Don't see much of a chance of precipitation here. We don't see a strong monsoonal flow. Despite the storms you've seen, it's not yet the full-blown monsoonal flow that can just really eliminate drought in this area, and I'm concerned it's not going to fully develop. So yes, isolated storms will really bring in some rainfall. I've seen some beautiful video of them, some of them lately, just looking at some people on Twitter. If you want to follow somebody great on this, follow Mike Olbinski. Great follow on Twitter. But this will also be the big concern here. The Pacific Northwest continues to show up drier in the forecast, and it's been very dry in this area. Okay, so let's move on with it. I want to show you the European operational runs. All right, let me take you back to this morning. So watch right here first. You're going to see the storms continue to hit that same area through the day on Wednesday and Thursday. Did you see that? So this is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, pretty quickly shown here. Now watch what happens after this. You're going to start to see these storms late in the week build into the southeast. So there they go. This is now getting out there by Friday. So we've opened this up. There's a low that's moved into Quebec, so we're going to increase storm chances in the northeast. And then we're going to watch. Remember, this is Friday. Now we're going to watch for that coupling of the jet. One piece of it here, one piece of it there. The two together are producing a low pressure center that's going to be coming out of Idaho and Wyoming into Montana. And what that does is that moves right across the northern plains, coming out of Montana into the Dakotas, and rolls across right there. Now remember, as that low takes shape on Friday, by Monday it makes it here, which means this is a slow mover. This is the kind that delivers multiple hours of rainfall to certain places. We'll keep an eye on the southern tail of that front for the risk of severe storms, and we'll see if we end up getting the right conditions to make those. But I just wanted to play that out for you to show you how this is all going to pan out. Now, using the operational European model run, I want to show you some model discrepancies here. Let me shrink this up for us real quick. There we go. Because you can see where the model's putting down this heavy rainfall corridor, a lot of isolated storms here, wetter northeast. Here's the second system rolling through, but you see it's got this whole area in through here that's very dry. I would just, if I had to make an adjustment to this, this will be the area that I think will stay drier, but I don't think we're bone dry in this entire spot in through here. Where I do think we're dry is down in Texas, down in the lower Mississippi River Valley. You can now see the model. I told you there's storms, but is it full-blown, monsoon? It's not. It's still drier than what we could typically get. We're drier here and then still pockets of the Canadian prairie. But we always need to compare this to the ensemble. So let me just show you the latest 10-day outlook for the probability of getting at least an inch of rainfall. So what you notice is this area is not as low as the operational run. It is drier here, but that is not as dry. The Canadian prairie, Texas, getting into the whole of the west outside of those isolated storm events that could put down some very heavy rainfall. This is what we're seeing in terms of the 10-day probabilities. I don't want to overlook this, how wet it could possibly be here in this section of the country. This is very close to Yellowstone as an example here, and what we could get in terms of additional rainfall along the Front Range. And note how wet Quebec is and how wet New England is out of this, and there's a lot of wet weather that's coming into the southeast too. If I show you though, jump this up to 2 inches, there's that model consensus track of the heaviest rainfall there, and even up to 4 inches, the models are pulling out probabilities of 10 to 30% in that particular range. Let's flip this over to the dry side really quickly. Whoops, that is not the one I wanted to show you. There it is. This is the probability of getting less than half of an inch. And again, just to show you the very dry, this is the chance of getting less than 1/10 of an inch of rainfall in the next 10 days. Now, over the next 10 days, the jet stream is going to be behaving in a way we've not seen it behave in a while. Big high latitude blocking, very deep trough flow follows the Aleutian Islands. We have a kind of downstream trough that's going to set up over the Great Lakes, which means all the heat's going to be suppressed to the south. There's going to be a lot of places across the country that escape the heat going into the first 10 days of August, while it stays very far to the south here. So to show you the precip for week 2 and then talk about that heat, Here's what the latest updates are from the CPC, from the European model, and from the GFS on week 2 precipitation outlook. And we get a pretty similar look from both the ECMWF and the CPC. Remember, I know I say this in every video, but the model is too dry. The GFS Ensemble is always too dry in the southeast this time of year. But we at least see a pretty consistent pattern for week 2, storms rolling along the southern edge of that deeper trough that's going to be settling in to parts of eastern Canada. Okay, let's now flip this over to a discussion about temperatures, because we still have excessive heat warnings in place throughout Texas and Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, getting up into Kansas. Flood watches are along the periphery, so here and here. We also have the air quality issues across the northern tier, where we have some Canadian wildfire smoke in this area, and then over here we have the wildfire smoke from the fires in the northwest. I wanted to show you one more thing about temperatures to add on to what I gave you yesterday. It would be the month of July, looking at low temperatures. It's very important this time of year in July and August to pay attention to low temperatures. Crops can be very stressed if low temperatures, of course, don't get cold enough. And I want you to see from New England all along the Carolina coast down to Florida, then the Gulf Coast to Texas, and then running here into the Four Corner states all the way up the northwest. This whole corridor has had extremely warm overnight lows, while the central United States, the plains, the Midwest have had cooler than normal overnight lows. So we'll monitor this throughout the month of August to see if there's any change in this pattern, but we have had very hot nights for a long time in these areas. What are the temperatures doing right now? Well, this is today's forecast high temperatures. Again, another very hot one from parts of Kansas and Oklahoma down to Texas, and also down along the Gulf Coast. Got quite a bit of heat here in the northern plains, but where the cloud cover is, where the rain is, that's where we've got the cooler conditions, right in through here. New England's still cooler because of the front that rolled through. And as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, you can just see the wetter weather building here and how it's keeping the cooler temperatures around. We got 90s on either side of it, and then hundreds farther to the south. So this is going into Thursday and Friday. Notice California through this time period, cooler. Watch this region right in through here, though, behind the low. Okay, remember the low that shows up on Friday and goes toward the Great Lakes? Watch the cold weather coming behind it. This is Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now, that cooler air that's coming in here in some places is 20 degrees colder than average for this time of year. It gets all the way down to the panhandles. So to be 90 degrees as a high in Amarillo is actually near normal, or even slightly cooler than normal for this point in August. But you can see here that so much of Texas in the south, getting into the southwest, stays extremely hot, and the west begins to heat up with this pattern as well. Where's the heat risk going to be out at week 2? Like I said, mostly suppressed to the very southern tier of the United States. This is where the risk of hazardous temperatures are from the 8th through the 14th. And that's also echoed in the newest run from the European Ensemble. So as I play this out, we go out there to day 5 through 10, and then day 10 through 15, and we see this pattern really becoming established of a broader trough in this area, keeping the cooler weather around. The heat stays farther to the south and at times in the west. So not a whole lot of change, pretty consistent model run to model run, differences here overall. So let's just wrap this up with some stuff going on in the Atlantic. This is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. In fact, let's see if they did. Nope, still the 2 a.m. update here. 50% chance out here, a 10% chance on the one north of it. And remember, what's going on out here is that the Bermuda High is tucked away over here. So systems that are forming are staying pretty far away from the U.S. at this particular point. Using the European Ensemble, I just went out 10 days here just to show you this. We can kind of rock back and forth. We continue to keep an eye on stuff coming off of Africa, but no major development in the next 7 days here. And the systems that are trying to form in the North Atlantic are moving away. Keep an eye on the East Pacific. We do need to watch what happens here, because we can get these systems to curl up into Mexico and come across and dump tons of rain on Texas. I'll just watch it for now. I don't see anything happening in the near future, but there's a lot of people in Texas that would, I think, love to have a system come through and dump some rain in this area. Lastly, I do want to show you just how much Saharan dust is out there across the Atlantic at this point. I think this is part of the reason why the Atlantic has struggled to get any early systems going, but it is just August 1st. And for the next 45 days, we're going to be going toward the peak of this hurricane season. So to be honest, it's kind of just the beginning, which means we'll just watch it continually throughout the remainder of this hurricane season. And finally, just some important information about the longer range. We did get a new update from the Bureau of Meteorology on El Nino. You can still see that they're projecting ocean temperatures to be somewhere in this 2.8 degrees C range by winter, where this El Nino will likely peak. But to be honest, this El Nino is it's still not really a part of the overall flow. We hinted last week about its influence on the subtropical jet, but I still don't see a full, we call it a coupling between the atmosphere and the ocean. In other words, no sustained westerly wind bursts, no significant pressure changes. And I'll just bring this up real quickly, Southern Oscillation Index. If we look at the Southern Oscillation Index, it fell. But to be fully down here, we talked about this last week, to be fully set up to be considered full-blown El Nino, it's got to get and stay well below -7. -7 is just the threshold, and we're just not there yet. So we'll watch this carefully to see how this evolves. It could be a major influencer on our fall and winter pattern, which we'll be discussing in coming weeks. But other than that, I think that's where I need to wrap it up today. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.